So I started this project last June before summer when I had cool glasses and long hair, but I got frustrated with it, so I put it away for a while. So I finally picked it up again and I finished it, and so this is the video. Hey y'all, Sai here! Well, I was working on this piece of wood, and the whole time I was working on it, it was like, man, that looks like that one character from Looney Tunes. You know, the big orange monster guy. And it's so funny because I made that height ruler for Never. I put all those Looney Tune characters on it, and someone wrote me and said, I just made a Gossamer. And that they love Looney Tunes, and I was like, Gossamer? Who is Gossamer? Gossamer is that orange guy! So I want to make a Gossamer. So I'm going to use this piece of wood instead, which is a little bit wider. And I found this picture of Gossamer, and I thought that would be really good. But it only shows the top half of him, and I think that I will just draw the rest in there. And so I'm looking up pictures of Gossamer and what he looks like, and you know, he wears those funny white shoes. See those funny white shoes? And sometimes he has legs, and sometimes he doesn't have legs. Like there he doesn't have, there he has skinny legs, but that's not a really good Gossamer. That's a good Gossamer, and he has bigger legs. That's the Gossamer that we remember from Bugs Bunny, and there's my picture. And so I think what I'm gonna do is I'll make his legs kind of thickish and fluffy with those white shoes. Oh, there he's moving with Bugs. Cool. So I sketched in the legs how I thought they may look, and I noticed how Gibbs was watching me. Padook. Yay! What other wood would we use for Gossamer? Padook, 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 yay! I usually cut out the pieces of the pattern and I glue the pieces to the wood, but I just traced this onto wood because this just really isn't a pattern. And I don't know what got into Wally and Gibbs all of a sudden. Then I cut those pieces out, and this was before I had my new Hegner scroll saw. And I used holly for the shoes and the eyeballs. Then, to get those inside cuts for the mouth and to cut out the eyes, I had to drill and thread my blade. And you know what? I really don't like doing this. I don't know, there's just something about threading that blade. And I've tried threading it from the top down and from the bottom up, and I don't know, I just don't care to do it. So I avoid it as much as I can. Oh yes, then I use the eyeballs that I cut out as templates for the eyeballs that I would cut out in the holly. And you know what? This really isn't the greatest technique. It's just better to use a pattern or just cut it out from that original tracing. I put all the pieces together and I just wasn't happy with it. So this is where I put it away for a while. Since then, I've gotten my new Hegner scroll saw, and I recently learned some brand new Intarsia techniques that I really wanted to try. So I picked Gossamer back up with the intention to finish it before I move on to this new Judy Gale Roberts pattern that I have that I really want to do. I really wasn't sitting in the dark here, even though it looks like it. Maybe it's because I'm using my brand new magnification light, and wow, what a difference! I do have some loops with a light that I love, but my vision has changed so much because of birthday candles, I can't use them anymore. So I have two different friends who recommended this light, and all I can say is, wow, it is so nice. So I cut out the letters for Gossamer. Then I added a few risers, one for his arm and one for his hand. Then I used a pencil and drew in some pupils for his eyes just because he looked weird with no pupils. Then I made two sanding shims, and this is something new I have just learned from Judy Gale Roberts. And somehow I missed this in all these years. Well, I've actually tried it before, but not like this. So I used double-sided tape to attach the pieces to the sanding shims, including taping the risers and the pieces that go on top of the risers. Then before I started sanding, I cut out the pupils with ebony wood. And then I also double-sided taped those in place to get ready to sand. I used 3 different sanding shims, one for the head and the arms, and one for the body, even though the body is one piece, but I wanted it to stand the same height as everything else with a sanding shim underneath it. So I just made one shim of its own. And the shoes had their own shim. So I started sanding, and when I was holding the shoes, which has a whole bunch of little tiny parts, a few of those little parts just shot out. I'll play that back in slow-mo for you. But luckily I was able to find those little pieces and reconfigure the tape to hold them in a little bit better. Plus I made sure to hold the entire shoe hanging onto those little tiny pieces as best I could. Then I would put the pieces all back together and check it. Then move on either readjusting that piece or moving on to the next piece. And I did that with the body and then the head. I also used a pencil to mark where I knew I needed to sand, and so that it would blend in with the other parts. And I was really happy about how it was shaping up, except those eyes. They just weren't doing it for me. Okay, those eyes were bad, so I made some new eyes. And these are much better. So I have them on the right side. Much, much, much better. There. Yeah, that's way better. Since those pupils are so small, I CA glued them to the whites of the eyes. Then I taped those back into the head section and took it back out to the pneumatic drum sander. And I used my pencil again to mark some spots and then removed a few of the pieces off of the shim to sand them a little bit, and then I put them right back on the shim to see how everything was looking. I also have this wonder wheel that is a Judy Gale Roberts tool that attaches to a grinder, and I used it to make the tufts of hair at the feet. So I chose this board because it kind of is the shape of the orange monster. And so I just thought it would be cool, but I want to get rid of this bark because it's not that great. Pulls right off. So I chiseled that off and it came off very easily. Then sanded that piece and reassembled Gossamer. Then I used 220 and I went over every part of Gossamer. The saw lines that make up his smile and eyebrows and stuff didn't look so great, so like I mentioned before, I really don't enjoy threading my scroll saw blade, so I used the Dremel and I went back over all of those lines. And I also put another flex drum sander, which is a tool that Judy Gale Roberts uses, and put it on the other side of my grinder. And I used that to put a little curve on the side of the eyeballs. I wanted to put a verse on the back, but you know what? I had a hard time finding a verse that would go with Gossamer. So while I was researching it, I discovered that Gossamer is actually a thing. There are two definitions. One is like a fine cobweb, and the other is used to refer to something that's very light, thin, and insubstantial or delicate. So the Warner Brothers must have chosen this name to be like calling a big dude tiny. Anyway, I just decided to put Isaiah 53 on the back and just a reference, which is a really awesome chapter describing Jesus, who wasn't to come on the scene for hundreds of years yet. Amazing stuff! I also put on my logo and signed and dated it. Then I got to looking at pictures of Gossamer again, and I noticed that he has black around his eyes and black fingernails, and his shoes have black on them too. So I got out my Coalwood wood burner and I wood burned all those areas. Okay, I'm going to use this cleaner, raw wood cleaner, because I'm going to be using this Rubio monocoat on it. Yeah. I've been experimenting with new finishes too, and I've never used this Rubio monocoat on an Intarsia before. It's actually made for floors, but I've been really wanting to try it, and today was the day. So I bought this cleaner because they recommended to clean any raw wood before applying the monocoat. However, I'm not sold that this cleaner is anything special. But I followed the recommendation anyway. And they say you clean the wood and you let it dry, which takes about 20 minutes, and then you apply the monocoat. So I mixed up the Rubio monocoat, which is a hard wax oil, 3 parts to 1, and you wipe it on the wood and you let it soak for a few minutes and then you wipe it off. And it's dry to the touch right away, but it really isn't set up for a few hours. So I put it on all the pieces and I left it overnight. The next day I was ready to start gluing and I noticed a little spot where the plywood riser was showing. So I took the riser and I just used an orange Sharpie and colored that area. And you know what? I think it's less noticeable, or maybe not even noticeable, to people who don't do Intarsia. Anyway, it's not the ideal solution, but it is what it is. So I glued up everything, cleaning up some squeeze out glue with a brush and some water. And then I added a sawtooth hanger to the back and it was done. Well, Gossamer's all finished. And I started this project, I don't remember when, but anyway, I finally finished it. So thanks for joining me, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye! Wow.